Hello and welcome to my first YouTube guide. Today I'm going to be focusing on Warlocks in the new raid, the Crucible of Storms, and helping you figure out what talent and Azerite setups you should run. Now if the last two expansions are any indication of how Blizzard is going to be designing fights, it should come as a surprise to absolutely no one that these two bosses are tailor-made for specs that can spread cleave. The first boss is a 2-boss encounter with frequent add spawns, and the second boss is a 1-boss encounter with frequent add spawns. This means that the multi-dotting of Affliction and the havoc cleaving of Destruction are going to shine, and Demonology, well, since the explosive potential nerf, what's the point? I'm going to kick things off with Affliction because it's been my go-to progression spec, so let's jump right into the talents. Now before I start listing them off, I do want to make it clear that the talent builds are going to be exact for the first and second boss. There's no variation necessary. The style of the fights are very similar, so you'll be fine picking this for both. Starting in the first row, as has been the case all expansion, the only option here is Deathbolt. Nightfall and Drain Soul are way too undertuned, and Deathbolt provides a very nice burst to your opener and throughout the fight. Now in the second row, you can pretty much forget about Siphon Life. There could be some debate between Wrath and Agony or Absolute Corruption, but in my opinion, Absolute Corruption is going to win out. In the level 45 row, I do believe it's safe to default to Burning Rush as your mobility option. However, on the first boss, if you are the ranged DPS tanking Zakshaz the Speaker, you may want to go with Demon Skin or Dark Pack for more survivability. Now the next 4 rows are pretty easy. Phantom Singularity is the only option in that row because it's the only one that provides a single target boost in damage. There's not enough adds for Sow the Seeds or Vile Taint, so you can pretty much ignore them. In the next row, there's nothing to really fear or stun, so Demonic Circle is another mobility boost that you don't really want to pass up. In the next row, Haunt has been completely dominating the other two options, so there's no sense looking at them, and in the final row, Dark Soul Misery is way too important to our rotation to pass up. Now when it comes to Azerite, we have some pretty good options. In my opinion, Racking Brilliance is going to be the one you want to stack the most, followed pretty closely by Inevitable Demise. Sudden Onset provides a pretty good boost in agony damage, and Treacherous Covenant, if you've been doing Battle of Dazar'Alor, is just a great flat damage increase. Keep in mind, if you do go the route of Inevitable Demise and Racking Brilliance, you're going to want to give yourself a little bit more haste than usual. Now the reason for that is the more haste you have, the faster your agony ticks. The faster your agony ticks means the faster you build Inevitable Demise stacks. Now agony ticking faster also means you're going to get soul shards faster, and the faster you get soul shards, the more Racking Brilliance procs you're going to get, which translates directly into more damage. Hell yeah. And unfortunately for this video, Blizzard decided to massively undertune these two bosses. My guild one-shot both of them, so I didn't get a chance to get any footage of me playing Destruction or Demonology, so instead of that, I'm going to show myself running around in circles. Thanks, Blizzard. One thing you'll notice about Destruction throughout all bosses is that its talent setup does not change. Gone are the glory days of Shadowburn being a good ability and Fire and Brimstone being toggleable, so now we just have Infernal damage and a bit of Havoc. Flashover selected over the other two options in the first row because of the quality of life it provides. What good is doing a bunch of Chaos Bolt damage if you cannot get your Chaos Bolts off before the adds die? In the next row, Reverse Entropy is pretty much always taken. It's a passive haste increase, and that's massively beneficial to our damage as opposed to the awkward and clunkiness of Internal Combustion, and Shadowburn, well, that ability may as well not be in the game. Now for the purpose of this video, I'm going to skip over the Burning Rush and Demonic Circle options because, well, we already went over them in the Affliction section, and I don't really want to repeat myself 3 times. We take Cataclysm in this row for very similar reasons as Phantom Singularity. It's the only spell in the row that provides any single target boost in damage, and the other two, well, there's no AoEing to be done, and even if there was, they suck. Skipping over the Demonic Circle row, we land on Grimoire or Grimoire or whatever the heck of Supremacy. Supremacy is currently what makes this spec tick. It's the only reason it can do a whole bunch of damage, and so much has been tied into the Infernal because of it that we actually lose damage everywhere else. Sacrifice used to be a viable option, but they nerfed it into the ground, and Roaring Blaze, while offers a nice sustainable damage increase, doesn't really make sense for Destruction because Destruction is all about doing big damage in condensed cooldown windows. And on these fights in particular, what good is doing burning damage over 6 seconds when you can have your Infernal boost the Chaos Bolt damage that you're going to be spamming in Havoc windows? In the last row, we're taking Dark Soul Instability. Soul Conduit's a little bit too unreliable, and Channel Demon Fire doesn't really give us anything we need. We don't need the splash damage because there's not a lot of clumped adds. Dark Soul Instability, however, allows us to control when we're going to get a big spike in damage, so that could be when there's a bunch of priority adds out or when we need to burn the boss. Due to all the add spawns, the Azerite options for Destruction are actually pretty fun. Your 1A and 1B options are going to be Rolling Havoc and Flashpoint. Rolling Havoc because on both encounters there's almost permanently a second target, and Flashpoint because the add spawns are so frequent that you're going to be able to benefit from that haste buff very often. Crushing Chaos and its synergy with Supremacy can't really be denied. It's going to offer you a really big Chaos Bolt damage boost whenever your Infernal is out, and Treacherous Covenant's just going to give you a nice passive damage increase. As I'm auto running into a wall instead of doing trash, we'll bring up Demonology. Over the course of Battle of Dazar'Alor, Demonology saw some changes. First, we saw a pretty substantial buff to explosive potential, and it was consequently nerfed because it was quite overpowered, and we loved it. The reason we loved it is because while Demonology doesn't have the strongest cleave kit, it did allow it to pump single target damage so much that it didn't matter. Now that it doesn't have that, Demonology is in a bit of a rough spot. I don't see it getting much use in Crucible progression, so I don't really recommend it. However, I will still offer some insight on what I believe will be useful for it. I think Demonic Strength is going to be the most popular choice here. While it and Bile Scourge Bombers are both AoE abilities, Demonic Strength doesn't cost any soul shards. As for Dreadlash, I don't think I've seen it used once this expansion, and I really doubt it's going to start shining here. Demonic Calling is going to be a little more universally taken than Doom. However, on the first boss, Doom does have some viability. However, regardless of the situation, Demonic Calling helps the rotation feel way better. Skipping the third row yet again, we're going to land on the Soul Strike row. I take Soul Strike because it's an instant cast soul shard generator. This is really nice when you're trying to set up demons for your Demonic Tyrant, and you can also use it while on the move. Summon Vile Fiend is better for single target situations with Nether Portal, and we won't be taking that, and From the Shadows is very similar to Dreadlash in that I've never really seen it used, and I highly doubt this is the raid to do it for it. Skipping the 5th row and onto the 6th, I'm actually going to recommend Soul Conduit. I don't usually recommend relying on RNG, however Inner Demons is pretty bad, and Felguard got nerfed alongside Explosive Potential. In the last row, we're going to go with Demonic Consumption. Nether Portal isn't a terrible option, but being tied to a 3-minute cooldown on fights where there's a lot of frequent ad spawns feels pretty terrible. Sacrifice Souls hasn't really ever amounted to anything, and Demonic Consumption is actually pretty good. Now that we see me auto running into another wall, I can start bringing up the Demonology Azerite traits. For Demonology are pretty strict. The talent choices we went with are pretty dependent on certain traits, so after you see this video, try and get your hands on the ones that are suggested. Leading the way for Demonology is still Explosive Potential. Even though it was nerfed, you do want 3 of them, and if you don't have 3, they're going to lose value, so make sure you can get your hands on a set of them. Another thing to keep in mind is that when you do have 3 Explosive Potential traits, haste on your gear loses value, so make sure to get your crit, mastery, and versatility up. It's extremely important to have at least one Baleful Invocation, reason being the instant generation of 5 soul shards every time you cast Demonic Tyrant is absolutely invaluable. Treacherous Covenant's doing its thing across all 3 specs. If you had a chance to grab a piece through Battle of Dazar'Alor, go ahead and put it on as long as it's not at the expense of 3 Explosive Potential or 1 Baleful Invocation. The primary stat increase is huge. And the final option is Demonic Meteor. I wouldn't really recommend it as much as the other 3, however, because Soul Conduit's being suggested, it synergizes really well and the chance of refunding a soul shard is extremely high. Okay guys, that's going to do it for my first video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I didn't really put a lot of thought into it before I made it, but I did always plan on making one, so here it is. I wish I had more footage of Demonology and Destruction, but like I said, the bosses were so easy that we one-shot them and I didn't get a chance to do that, but with Mythic coming up, hopefully I will soon. I do have more guides in the works, so please stay tuned for that. If there's anything you guys are looking for, please let me know and I'll do my best. The next video I plan on putting out has to do with my user interface. I do get a lot of questions about that, so stay tuned. And if you have any questions about this guide in particular, ask me in the comments and I'll be sure to respond.